Welcome to Branding the Beltway. I'm Stacey Piper, a 25-year government marketing expert and the host of the podcast that helps you level up your B2G marketing game with actionable insider tips and real-world case studies. If you're in the business of doing business with the government, you're in the right place. Each episode delivers straight-to-the-point strategies from senior marketing leaders familiar with navigating the unique world of GovCon. In each episode, we'll first explore that month's topic on a macro level, talking strategy with CXOs. Then we'll deep dive into the same topic on a micro level, examining the practical approach of development and implementation. We're talking brand awareness, content strategy, and the campaign tactics that actually move the needle. Whether you're a CXO, a growth strategist, or marketing practitioner looking to strengthen your federal position, Branding the Beltway is your essential resource for driving results and winning more contracts. Let's connect strategy to execution and position your brand to win. Hi, and welcome to this month's episode of Branding the Beltway. I'm your host, Stacey Piper. Today's episode is Selling Beyond Federal, what GovCons need to know about winning in state, local, and higher education markets. Our guest today is Jimmy Baker. He's a public sector technology marketing strategist and the author of How to Win Business from the Government. Jimmy, please tell us about yourself and your book.
Stacey, thanks so much for having me on. I'm Jimmy Baker, and I've written a book, actually 2 editions of it, called How to Win Business from the Government. And what it tries to do is show people how to follow the money, create an unforgettable first impression, and win new business in the government market. I've also written a handful of other books, which you can look at my website on. But today we're going to talk about how you take your federal quals and start looking at the state, local, and education market.
Excellent. So let's jump right in. I think our guests are really going to get a wealth of information here. And, as you know, because you're in the market, in the thick of it, working in public sector has become increasingly more complex. And government contractors are navigating change and acquisition policy and FAR overhaul. When you're speaking with CXOs, what's your first response when they suggest they might want to enter the SLED market?
My first response, and I say this a little joke, is you're given one mouth and 2 ears. So I always try to listen to hear what people are saying. And then what I like to do is talk to them a little bit about the market. The SLED tech market is over $90 billion this year. The new SLED fiscal year for most organizations actually started this month. So they run a little differently than federal. But when people say SLED, I think it should be broken out. We have 50 states plus territories. There's over 3,000 counties, 36,000 different cities and towns. There's a bunch of community colleges, K through 12 districts, public utilities, quasi-government organizations. So when you start looking at this, you need to understand the personas, where the money is, and how you're going to do it. So after I listen to folks, I really try to focus them. SLED's an awful big place. They all have money. You need to focus on the areas that best resonate with what your unique selling proposition is.
Absolutely. I love that because, yes, understanding exactly who you're trying to influence and what you're trying to get them to do is going to be key. And I loved what you said about even the fiscal year. So I've been in this market 25 years. And I didn't know that the state calendar was different than the federal calendar. So like me, a lot of people might assume SLED is kind of like Fed with just smaller contracts, maybe a shorter sales cycle. So how different really is SLED from Fed?
I'm going to give a vague answer, and it's not to frustrate people, but it's the same but different. And there are nuances with it. One of the big things that's a little bit different is each state has their own governing policy. So when I lived in Northern Virginia, I've split my career equally between the West Coast and the East Coast. When I was living in Northern Virginia, I went down to GW for my master's certificate work in government procurement, and we had to read the FAR. Now, the cool thing, probably no one says that the cool thing about the FAR, but it's a rule book that everyone's got to follow. With the federal government, the rules are I can go to the Exhibit 52s, look up the difference in budget between the DME and steady state money and have a really good sense. I can look at audit reports and other stuff. Well, it changes when you go from different governing body to a different governing body. So it's not like there's the SLED acquisition regulations and everyone does it that way. Some of them, now the majority of SLED organizations started their fiscal year July 1st, but there's some that do biennial budgets. There's some that a handful of them start a little bit later in the year. So they all do things a little bit differently, but much like we see things trickle down from federal, states will mimic a lot of the things that they do. So I'm going to pause and I just want to give you a couple examples on that. States have mandates and political directives by the governor, much like when a presidential executive order happens. Last year, we all followed the DOGE website and what was going on. A lot of states created their own versions of that. Some of them were called HOJ, MOJ. I think my favorite is GOAT, and they created their own version of that. So you're going to see that take place where it's the same but different. And depending on the size and scale of people that you're involved with, a smaller organization might move a little quicker.
That's great. And, I was laughing to myself when you paused at the beginning, because I thought your answer was going to be, it depends. Right. And so but before we leave this idea of, the similarities or difference, have you come across something that you see as like the biggest misconception that businesses or business leaders may have about entering this market?
I'll tell you one thing that happened to me personally that I found a little tough. So my wife and I decided back in 2007 that we needed to relocate to California to help a family member that was going through a sickness. No other reason than that. I was happy in Northern Virginia, but we made the move and we strategically plopped down in Northern Cal. So Northern Virginia to Northern Cal, in particularly Sacramento, because I thought the skills of what I knew as a federal business developer and marketer would be applicable in this market. In the California government, I found things easier to find in the federal government because of the controls in place. Like whenever I would do a marketing program, I would always pull the Exhibit 300, the business case. Well, what's working, what's not? And you have stuff that where it is federally. It's just in different pockets, and it takes a little longer to get your proverbial sea legs as you're doing it. Now, remember too, things are saying like GSA, they may have their own version of it. CMAS here in California, other states have that. So when you're used to things the way the federal works, remember it's a centralized FAR that says it's going to do it this way. This is how we'll report it. That can change, and that's the one thing I had to find is how do I figure out where I normally went to this website, on IT dashboard, where's that here? And not everybody presents their information the way the federal government does.
That's really interesting. And I could see how that would really kind of slow you down and cause a little bit of strife internally when you think things are going to be one way and be discoverable one way and they're not. So thank you for sharing that misconception.
Well, my advice to folks, I've always been a big fan of admitting what you don't know. When you get around people and you don't know where something is, just ask them kindly. You don't have to know every answer. They'll say, well, where does this exist? I was looking for something like this. Do you have that? You'll be surprised how far that goes with most people.
Absolutely. I love that. So, we talk about, when we talk about pursuing federal work, it's often in terms of civilian or defense or the IC.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Should companies pursuing SLED work organize around agencies or missions or geographies?
That's a very good question, and I I won't answer it with it depends, but let me give some advice that was given to me. I was blessed in my life. I had three what I consider to be some of the best business development people in the world pour into me. And the advice that they gave me was this: follow the money. They all have it. Know thy customer. Go and talk to the people involved and focus on not what's forecasted, but what's approved monies. Just because something's forecasted doesn't mean that there's money there. If you are selling a software or hardware or whatever the service is, in theory, it's not a different model that's for, one part of the government from the other. What's really important is to wrap what you do to the mission of that organization and tell them the story of it. Early on in my training, as I was getting taught how to be a business developer, and then if we have time, I'll tell you how I went to get into marketing. But I remember every Tuesday morning, I'd have to come in, and I was only allowed 7 slides. Slides 1 through 6 were about the government customer, what they needed. The last slide, I was an outsourced business development consultant, how we helped them achieve that. So, like I said, that notion of know thy customer has always been with me. And if you are, I'll just pause for a moment just to give you a credible example here. Let's say you're working in Department of Homeland Security and you do critical infrastructure better than anyone in the world. Well, that translates over to many state governments. For example, California has the California Office of Emergency Services. There are urban area security initiatives that the federal government funds to help when different disasters happen. So there's a lot of things that you can parallel your experience that, hey, we sell healthcare here. This is how we helped them. We think this is worth you looking at. And those are valuable, whether it's a federal reference or it's a commercial reference.
I love that. And, I know we have a question coming up on the past performance. And I might jump ahead to that in a minute, ahead of buying cycle. But really, I wanted to, before we left this idea of how to organize your pursuits, I love the whole, put the customer first and know the customer and attack to their explicit needs, not the forecast. But before we leave this topic, like how important is being part of their economic region and having that localization in your go-to-market strategy?
That's a great question. And I'm going to pause for a moment to collect my thoughts on this, because I also want to share 2 anecdotals with this from when I worked for government and from when I was working one time with a Canadian company.
Okay.
So ultimately, what's the goal of state government? To have a good tax base, have jobs for their citizens, to make the government serve the citizens better, protect them, have efficiency, and so forth. Many companies that are in the federal space, if you look them up online and you go to their case study sections, you'll see that they do state and local, they do education. Sometimes when you're working, depending on what it is, you may have to have an office, a presence there, so that your engineers, your service people can provide that state for the requirements of the contract. Sometimes you're required as a contractor to be within X amount of miles for something. So ultimately, it's good to have a presence. But when I was in the DC Beltway, one of the things that I would, tell you all to look at, the first thing I would do, let's just say you're in the Dulles corridor in Northern Virginia, where I used to live. It's a great place to start. Go knock on the door of the Commonwealth of Virginia. When you're done with that, go look at the big counties. I lived in Fairfax, Loudoun, and Montgomery County during my they all have money. The next thing to look at, there are a bunch of community colleges that have this giant system that go into some of the state universities. I'm going to plug my alma mater, Maryland, go Terps. And you can look at, whether you're knocking on the door of George Mason or some of the Virginia Tech, it doesn't matter the schools, but look at how your solutions that you have right there, they're in your neighborhood. So focus first on Virginia, then drive over to Maryland. You can go to Delaware. It's not that bad of a drive. And Harrisburg is within reach. Start in your own backyard. There's enough work, enough opportunity there. And just like their federal conferences like AFCEA and some of the different things IAC does, well, there's state ones too, and you can learn to be a part of those. But again, back to the question, yeah, geography is important, but NASCIO is the National Association of State Chief Information Officers, and they put out some really incredible reports. Go read them all. But they do this top 10 thing. For the past several years, top priority was cybersecurity. Now it's AI. And if you look at those priorities, there is a notion a lot of times within state worlds, it's called whole of state. How do we open this up to cover all of our state? Not just, everybody needs to be protected from cyber. Everybody needs to understand what's going on with AI, modernization, hybrid cloud, workforce development. Look at these reports and figure out how you can help them, because there might be a state that issues a mandate that's so similar to what you're doing on the federal side that you go, whoa, hey, let me show you what we're doing over here. We're going to fly you out to see this, and I guarantee we can do it for your Department of Transportation, something like that. Always look at those things and how you correlate them. Now, if I can I pause for a second and just share two insights from each side of the proverbial grass, because I also worked for government, and I want to explain like when people don't know you. So I had the privilege of working at a state university that started at a National Guard base, a cyber institute. And I worked as a contractor there for many years for the office of the Chief Information Officer of a university here in California. And one day we had this person coming in to pitch us. Now, I many times was given vendors to field, and I would always ask them for an agenda, what they're going to talk about. And I kid you not, I'm not going to say the name of the company or who this person was or anything like that. This person was in the middle of their PowerPoint. And my boss, the CIO, said, "Can I tell you what's happening here?" The person looked at him and goes, "Well, let me get through my presentation first," and missed the opportunity. We had another person from the company, and they saw all of our eyes go, "Come on, we want to talk with you." But the person was so focused on that presentation and making these points that they missed the bigger point. So always do your homework. Ask people, is this a good agenda? Is there anything else I need to add or take away from it? Spend some time doing it instead of doing a product pitch at me with features and benefits. My system and goals might be different. So one lesson. The other lesson I want to teach y'all, I got to go work for government. One day I had a client, this is back when I lived in Northern Virginia, that was selling into Homeland Security. It was a Canadian company. We had spent months analyzing the budget, knew where the money was, knew how their software helped this organization. In my opinion, we put a Hall of Fame worthy PowerPoint together. It was all about them. It was proofread, looked beautiful. My client was flying into Reagan. He was going to meet me over at at Union Station about an hour before the call, so we could just do final walkthrough. So he and I are sitting there. We're having a cup of coffee, and my cell phone rings. And you know it's not good. You saw it was the office. The assistant of this CIO says to me, "Jimmy, I'm so sorry, but our CIO is triple booked." I said, "Ma'am, please, if there's any way," I was begging, "my client has flown in from Canada at great lengths. If we could just walk your CIO to the car, we just want a minute." And I go, I'm not going to say what the words were, but I said, "Can you tell her we do this for that and can help you with this?" So we knew where we fit in. So I looked, I don't have a soft voice. My client looked back at me, so because we're getting dumped, I go, "Hold tight." They said they would call back. Maybe we can get another meeting tomorrow, let's see what happens. So calls back. Yes, the AE says, you've got a couple minutes, get here now. So the person I was walking over with was a excellent salesperson. He had an engineering background. He's one of the best presenters I said, so we're throwing away this beautiful PowerPoint. You got a minute. He walked into the room. The CIO looked at him and she said, you've got one hell of a consultant, but you only have a minute to go. This person here is staying for the meeting because I'm truly double booked and I got to do stuff with them. Person I was with said, may I go to your network diagram on the wall? Walked over to it, took his fingers and said, this is where you're getting bottlenecked. We're doing this. He named the commercial companies. Here's how we can help you. We walked out with a direction to a person that had a prime contractor and were told to be added on. Those things don't just happen. Now, that could have gone many different ways. That's, the bottom of the ninth, bases loaded kind of, for our sports fans. But because we took the time to know thy customer, knew where the money was, it helped us meet objections, and you will get them.
Absolutely. I love that example. And it's a good reminder of why, you need alignment between your business strategy, your sales and BD strategy, and your marketing communications. So just before those examples, when we were talking about how to target, geographically, mission, agency-based, you talked about past performance. And we were talking about how to translate some of that federal past performance for states. And, many contractors assume that their federal quals automatically give them credibility everywhere else. And so I just wanted to pause and dive deeper into that and really find out, in your opinion, when does that federal experience become a competitive advantage, and when could it actually be a detriment if they don't adapt their positioning?
I personally have never thought of federal cause as a detriment. You are working for one of the most sophisticated, largest buyers of technology in the world. It's a system. It's complicated. So we made the example earlier about if you work for DHS, you could come to California and knock on the door of OES, or a lot of states like Texas has their own Department of Military. Look to where you can transfer in the verticals that you're doing. So if you're doing transportation, logistics, healthcare, and what I would say to anyone, if you are working with the federal government and you can show where you have helped in areas and how that translates to the state market, many of the state budgets, well, they receive money from the federal government. So that's really important. I would always couch it as a positive, but again, DC communicates a different style. I've lived in two different parts of our country, from the east to the west. The communication style different and everything in between. I've interviewed hundreds of government people. The thing you have to make sure of, when I was in the DC Beltway, it was bottom line up front. What is it? Tell me the point, and boom, boom, boom. Not every place works that way. So if you ground yourself, where's the money? What's the mandate that's making them do this? And how can I best tell my story? And that's what you have marketers for, that look at the different personas. And then the other thing I just kind of want to point out to folks that's really incredibly important to be mindful of. We live in a workforce right now where we have baby boomers. They process information different than Gen X. Gen X does things different than millennials. Millennials do things different than Gen Z. And then most of us will be in the workforce when Gen Alpha starts coming in. And a lot of that has to do with technology. A lot of it has to do with how people see things. But again, there are surveys out there by many of our, you and I have talked about some of those surveys in the past. Look at where government's going for information. Make yourself present there. Government is open to hearing a government subject matter expert. Government will read white papers. They're looking for industry to tell them. When I worked for government, I went to RSA and DEF CON every year because I wanted to be up to speed on what was going on in cybersecurity. If I happened to hear, say the Department of Justice or the White House is speaking somewhere, I'd go hear it. So government is looking for new subject matter experts. And the last thing I'll say here, and then I'll pump the brakes for a moment. In my career, the thing that I'm always working on and improving upon is being a lifelong learner. We are in transitions. The market I'm in now is not like when I started. We witnessed last year one of the first recorded AI agentic cyber attacks. That means it's attacking as AI. We're in this world where last month Trump issued Executive Order 14412. Outside of this call, you probably need to talk and understand what's going on with post-quantum cryptography. It's a natural play to security, but there are things that are changing. So as you're looking at these personas, your federal calls and all this stuff, understand people have to educate themselves. And that's the perfect play for marketing people like myself to do that. And they're going to places, they're looking to read, they're looking to understand. So let me pause there. And then there's this, if we have time, there's something I want to come back to about marketing and a question I ask at a lot of conferences.
Absolutely. So I think that I'd love to take a quick commercial pause and then come back and talk about this tactical, practical, how we can operationalize the go-to-market with your marketing and BD teams. So we'll do that real quick. This episode of Branding the Beltway is brought to you by Piper Strategies and Orange Slices. Piper Strategies, marketing that moves the needle. Piper Strategies is a full-service creative agency for leaders serious about growth. We decode the complex, translating mission-driven work into clear, compelling narratives. Our clients expand their reach, communicate with impact, and earn trust in competitive markets so they can win more work. We don't just deliver results, we build your internal marketing muscle. With Piper Strategies, clients grow with us until they outgrow us. It's a partnership-first, un-agency approach that not only gets you noticed and builds credibility, but also scales your brand and your team. Learn more at piperstrategies.com. Orange Slices, fresh intelligence for B2G success. Cut through the noise with Orange Slices, a trusted source for public sector insights, teaming opportunities, and procurement intel. With a playful name and a powerful platform, they're serious about making data accessible and usable so the entire GovCon community can thrive. For resources, visit orangeslices.ai. Welcome back to the second half of this Branding the Beltway podcast. The topic we're discussing is selling beyond federal, what GovCons need to know about winning in state, local, and higher education markets with Jimmy Baker. Jimmy, thanks for bearing with us for that commercial break. I know right before we went on break, you were going to give an example, a deeper dive into that localization conversation we were having. And I think you had some tips on how to reach those localized audiences.
I want to talk about an important part of marketing. So earlier in the podcast, we talked about know thy customer, know the money, know how to leverage your federal clause. But ultimately, we're in marketing. We love shows. We know how important it is. And remember, people buy from people they trust. The human connection is extremely important. So I'd like to talk about some of the things that you might want to be aware of. You know, SLED like Fed has key conferences that you need to attend. I also encourage you all to create your own events. Let me give you an example. I live in San Diego. There, every year in February, there is FCA West. It's an important show to be at. Also, every year here, organizations like GovTech, eRepublic, they put on the San Diego Digital Government Summit. They're very important events to be at. What I would encourage you to say, though, is, and I'm going to give you an example of how I've worked with no budget to budgets, because that's always important. If you can't find a venue that works for you, create your own. When I moved to Sacramento, I created my own events venue called the Public Sector Technology Exchange. And we would host venues that were open to the public, and we would talk about the issues impacting government. So remember, some conferences have a big ticket cost. You're not sure what your ROI is. Always measure what you're going to get out of it. But the thing I want to leave people with, the the return on investment of a show is not up to the show itself. It's up to you and your team and what you do. And we live in this world where sometimes, this will shock everyone that I'm going to say this, sometimes marketing will complain that sales doesn't follow up on leads, and sales will say, well, the leads weren't any good. And that's truly the story of how I got into marketing. I one day was at my office in the shopping bag building there in Tyson's Corner, and my bosses brought me in. They said, listen, we're having a problem with this marketing program that we're doing. We need you to get in and apply business development metrics. And I have fell in love with the space and have been there for the last 15 years. What I want you all to realize is that there's a couple things that need to take in place. So let's talk about no budget to budget. There's going to be a lot of small startups that go, I can't afford $10,000 to $30,000 to be an anchor sponsor for an event. So let me tell you some of the things I did when I worked with smaller brands. In this world we live in today with social media, you can equalize a lot of things. You can create the same contact that big brands do. You can do amazing things. You can create video, etc. One of the things, one time I was at a healthcare show in it was in New Orleans, and we did not have a lot of budget. We actually couldn't afford the booth space. It was out of reach. We had enough to send 2 people to listen to the show, take notes, and there were important people that we needed to meet. So here's what I did. It's just what it is. You can't, sometimes your budget restricts what you do. We all deal with that. What I decided to do was look at what we could do rather than what we could not do. I made a short list of a handful of people that we needed to meet, where we'd say, if we meet A, B, C, D, and E, our event will be successful. Knowing that I could not afford a booth, I went and looked up the hotel online and found a couch in a certain corner of the event. And I'd have people joke at this event, wow, it's the couch man, he's over there again. But I would sit with people and we set up key meetings. We sent them calendar invites. We talked to them about what we wanted to accomplish. And this is for a software I was selling in marketing. And we did that, and we met with people, and it became successful. We met way before the event. We developed a lead gen program to get those people to meet with us. After the event, we did a debrief. We did a follow-up. So what I would say is that when you're getting ready to do an event, whether you have an incredible budget and you can, afford some of the larger shows, these are some of the things you need to be doing. First off, get an idea of who are the leaders that have budget either for an upcoming RFP or investment in what you do. Use market intelligence, either software, AI, whatever you're going to do, but figure out, do the people that are my target market, are they really going to be there? Because that's where you're going to get your ROI. The next thing is, like I said, start 2 months out. If you're going to have a booth, if there's going to be follow-on, if there's a set of the audience, say there's a snowstorm or thunderstorm, maybe you need to do a virtual side of this as well. Always be flexible, but look in advance of who you want to target, invite them to your booth, and if you're broke, invite them to the lobby to say hi to your smiling face, and make sure they have a way to connect you to the show. I find calendar invites, the world works on Outlook, are the way to go. Next thing I want you to do is spend some time training your people. This is the thing. Sometimes marketing and sales like to be different. Shouldn't be that way. Sales shouldn't be telling marketing what to do, and marketing shouldn't be telling sales to do, but we all should be working together, collaborate. We should be supporting them. When you're at a booth, I believe, and this is just my own opinion, no one else's, that marketing people are responsible for the first 2 steps of the sales process. There's a great book when I was in the Dale Carnegie Sales School called The 5 Great Rules of Selling. 5 steps: attention, interest, conviction, desire, and close. When you're at a show, you need to be doing attention and interest. Ask the salespeople. They probably have a battle card you created of how to ask questions. But what you want to do, if someone's, you're handing out a pen, a water bowl for a dog, a t-shirt. Hey, before I give you this, can you tell me, we do this? Who is the right person to talk to? Do you have anything coming up? Ask them questions. Don't be afraid to do it. Keep a journal for your team where everyone records what's going on. Some Some events have apps that are good to use as well. But remember, what your marketing people should not, and I've watched this a million times. I walk shows to see who has, bad themes, who's not engaged. I can't tell you how many people I see. They're sitting there at their table on their phone and they're not engaging with people. The booths that do the best, they are standing, they're smiling, they have something to offer, and it doesn't matter who you are. They're treating people with kindness and they're bringing them in. Make sure your team does that. Do not have a person that just comes to sit and just kind of looks. I can't tell you how many. Also, make sure your messaging says what you do in 30 seconds at least, 2 sentences. We have so many marketing people that use cliche buzzwords. Don't do it. Tell people bottom line up front, the bluff, what you do, and that will help.
What I wanted to dive into a little bit more to follow on, you talked a lot about like pre-event coordination, post-event, and on-site on the floor. When you think about marketing communications beyond the event, are there specific tactics and channels and strategies that you would say work really well in SLED? Like, when you think about all the different things marketers do beyond in-person events, are there some things you would put on your short list?
I very much would. I'm going to pause and ask everyone listening to think about this. Can you name, so we're recording this on a Thursday, can you name 3 posts you saw Monday and 4 emails? I can't. Can you name a couple of them? Yeah, so one of the things that we tend not to do is have a good follow-up. And this is one thing where government is so ahead, federal is so ahead of the curve. We now call it account-based marketing, the journey and all that. Well, if you've been in the federal government, you've been doing that. It's just born into our DNA. We read GAO reports. We know where to get the strategy guides of certain agencies. We know the difference between how much money goes into putting the lights on to what's new money. We know the incumbents. We have so much data. We are on top of our game. And one of the things I would encourage you to do, there's a lot of organizations I follow. I do a lot of reading where I'm trying to keep up to speed on things. Think about the next phase of the journey with those people, how you can inform them, where they get their information. I read books. I have newsletters that I rely on. I watch a lot of videos, and I listen to people speak all the time on a variety of topics. Make sure you're engaging in that way. There's enough industry reports that will tell you this. People read white papers. They watch videos. But the thing you have to realize in our current environment right now is we mentioned all the demographics here. People process information differently, and you have to apply to that. I like to buy a book and write in it and make notes, where you might be marketing to a decision maker that only wants the stuff digitally. Very different how people process information. Our attention span is changing dramatically. And so people are information overloaded. So you want to have a frequency where you're continuing the discussion on, again, what you know about how you help them with this directive. So I think a continued discussion with people and keeping in front of them is very vital. And I would also understand that you're always showing them and telling them what their walkaway is and why this is important to their mission and what they're doing. Because it may not be clear, because we are, in this day and age, information overloaded.
Absolutely. I think one of the major takeaways I have from this conversation is really to study that new customer persona and customize your value prop and all of the upsides of using your solution, your company, for that local agency, but also not just the what the takeaway is and the proof point, but also how you deliver it. Like, the language you use, the speed at which you deliver it. Because like you said, you could be talking to a New Yorker, or you can be talking to a Georgia peach, right? And you can connect with someone if you speak the same way they do versus if you come at it as a fast talker. So I really like that.
Yeah, the other thing too, when you're doing the federal thing, I don't want people to get freaked out that it's just they do RFPs. They also use GWACs, government-wide acquisition contracts. They use marketplaces to buy stuff, because one of the things government realizes is that there is a speed to buy, and so there's, what is there, Omnia? There's a whole bunch of different of these GWACs that are in the state market. They can even use your GSA schedule if they want. But I would, if I were going into this market, I would make sure, I got a good consultant like Stacey, or I had financing contracts people. And the key you're looking for is people that have a high degree of efficacy. And why that's important, because there's always, you want to make sure that, what the government gets is what they need, and it's a solid vehicle. So like I said, I would always look for that. And one of the things that I've always done in my career when I'm either marketing or pitching a new idea is the FAR is a wonderful book. And it's hard to read because there's a lot of stuff in it, but there's a section in there called 15.6, and just Google it. And it talks to you about how to give an unsolicited proposal. And I will tell you this, with the changes that I've seen in agentic attacks, what I'm seeing in quantum, government will not always know everything. They want industry to come in and tell them. So you creating, as marketers, create a little document that might reflect a little bit what the unsolicited proposal looks. Show them how this works. Show them where you've been doing it. And those things can go a long way.
I love that advice. And yeah, it makes me think of those pilot programs and bake-offs and things like that, where you prove it out first and then they hire you to build the whole thing.
Absolutely. A story for another time. I'll tell you how I had to throw something across an airplane hangar to see if it was tough enough for the government. So, and that was the test. But
oh my gosh,
you show people, and I will tell marketers this as well. Remember, I'm a business developer for a good time of my career. Then I went into this strategy position, which is marketing and BD, and I love it. But a lot of times people don't deal with objections well. And if someone gives you an objection, most people are asking questions. Take time, say, hey, if you don't know it, but look at what those objections are. And many times as a marketer and business developer, someone may tell you no, and it's okay to kindly remind them, your government says you got to do it. Like this stuff on post-quantum cryptography, it's not me telling you to do it. It's your boss who's saying this has got to be done in 30 days, this in 90, this in 120. And we have solutions for that. So that's why it's really important when you do hit an objection is talk with folks, understand the why. And I for another time, I have a great story of an objection I hit for 8 months and how we went around it with both marketing and persistence. But I hope that answers the question. There's just so many similarities between Fed and SLED. Start in your own backyard. You can probably use GSA and just leverage the great quals you have with one of the world's most sophisticated buyers of technology, and show how you can help someone with the problems that they have, and always make sure it's funded, not forecasted.
Yeah, that is some great takeaway advice and summary of our conversation. I feel like we need 3 more segments on this topic, Jimmy, but I do appreciate.
I want to come back. I always enjoy talking with you, both recorded, and Stacey and I have some great conversations too, as well as outside of the podcast. But I'd be happy to come back in, because we're hitting a lot of information on this at this podcast, and maybe break down some of these areas.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Branding the Beltway. If you're looking for an outsourced marketing partner or fractional marketing leadership who truly gets the GovCon sector, Piper Strategies is the team to know. We're not just here to deliver, we're here to empower. For resources or to inquire, visit piperstrategies.com.